In part 1 and 2 of this video series on Log4j, we show ways of detecting exploration and in terms of finding vulnerable things in your environment. This one is actually detecting post-exploitation. This information was actually provided to me by our great friend Leopoldo Aguirre, also known as Polo. So first here's the URL on the pickup that we replayed in here to test these things out. And if you haven't watched the previous series, in the video description of all my videos, there's a link to a public box folder. In there is a folder called Log4j where you can find the latest version of this notes file. Well, the detection all of the actual exploitation has all to do with the fact that in the payload of the network we find these 4 characters: CAFE BAB. People call it CAFE baby, or whatever it means. But what this is all about is that whenever somebody is loading a Java library, then in the payload that's going to be preceded by the presence of these 4 characters. So if we can detect those, doesn't mean that everything is going to be an exploitation of sorts, but what you will see is in this analysis is that you will start with this. If we find instances of such and they are coming from a remote location, that is most certainly an exploit, unless you are in the habit of loading remote Java classes from other sites, which in this case this is going to be a false positive, but I don't think that anybody should be in the business of doing that. So the first thing that we're going to be doing is that we are going to actually take this AQL search and we're going to run it in the system where I already replayed the pickup that is shown in here. So if I go here, let me actually go for the last, I'm going to put 8 hours. And the beauty of this is that you can go back here days, okay? Doesn't have to, because remember, QNI stores the information that it extracts from the packages. So all that nice data is there. In my demo system, this search for the last 8 hours takes 5 seconds. So it's actually very fast. Let's take a look at these 2 entries that were found. And notice the source and destination IPs. So the source IP is the one that ends in 238.10, and the destination IP ends in 11, right? And of course, this is what is being put on the pickup. In the case that you find this out, and these IPs corresponds, one of the IPs corresponds to an external IP address, and that's the problem, right? So if we take a look at it, we see that the payload, and this is the beautiful part of it, it detects the presence of those 4 hex characters. We can see them right there. So now this first phase of that silly message, that first phase of the detection tells us, well, there's somebody loading remote Java classes. Let's actually investigate, now that we have that, the traffic going between those 2 IPs. And for that, this is the second AQL statement in which we are going to be inspecting all the flows between those 2 IP addresses, where in particularly whether we got something going into the number 10, right? It's actually going in there. So basically this is equivalent to say if the source or destination is the 10, what is it where we saw that actual traffic going into? Notice in here, that's the destination IP. Let's actually run it against the source of the previous finding. So this is destination, this is the source. The source, if I remember, yeah, that's the 10, and that's what we're going to be doing the next phase of the search. Let's actually go back to network activity, paste that command in here. Let me actually go back last 8 hours as well. I'm going to use the look ahead, hit enter, I have it there, and we find one flow. That's the confirmation on the second phase that, and we can actually see the nature of what is it that has been done in here. We can see that there's an attempt of doing a login that failed, but the nature of what is actually going on, it really depends on your system. This is just an example of those things. But again, the important thing is to find that what is called JK. I actually mentioned that. I don't know if he created that term or if he took it for somebody else, the magic word. I believe that this is something that existed in, that string existed in Java forever, but I don't know if it was always called the magic word. But it's a way of knowing that a class has been loaded. If you happen to detect this between two internal addresses, that's even worse, because that means that the bad guys are moving laterally east and west within your actual network. So again, thank you, Paulo, for providing this to us, and this can help us detect actual exploitation with just having QNI. We're going to be doing other videos where we show Java rules and QRadar rules that you can build for detection this and the network traffic analysis. But for now, let's provide this to the community. Thank you, Paul.